Well, our talk title this morning, as you may have guessed from everything that already occurred this morning, is Love is Always the Answer. And we are not actually talking specifically about human love, although as an entity of the being of God, that too. But we're talking today more about what love is in the overall, the universal, the overarching idea of life. So, in our We Believe statements, one of them, which some of you know is my favorite, it is written, we believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. And interestingly, the words capitalized, and capitalized to me, whether it's true or not, means it's a God word, it's synonymous with God. Those words are goodness, loving, and givingness. God is the self-givingness of life, to all of life. Interestingly, loving kindness, the love is capitalized, the K is lowercase, and that is on our human side. I remember how I had to make that resolve within myself when I stepped into Science of Mind, because God was all loving, and that love at that time in my life, I related to the same love that we have with humans. And that love can appear to be removed or not, and that isn't God. God is the love. Ernest Holmes defines love as the self-givingness of the spirit through the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation. For me, that means that God, or spirit, or love, expresses itself as creation. You are an example of God's love in the world because you are created. We are created in the likeness and image. Love expresses itself in terms of creation. It's quite a different idea than the idea of a loving God who gives sometimes if you're good and not if you're not. It's a totally different idea. It's an idea that as an expression that has been created, you are already heir to all that love. So Emerson tells us that the word God is synonymous with the word love. And that is the truth. So looking more deeply at what is love is valuable. Love is a creative force. It is an impulsion. So I looked up what impulsion meant to have a more thorough understanding because Holmes uses the word impulsion when he uses love quite frequently. And impulsion, one of the definitions, is the force or motive behind an action or process. Now, motive, I'm going to take once again, not as a human motive for doing something, but a motive meaning a cause. God is the love. That love is the cause back of all life. It is the original source. Love, then, is a cosmic force. It already is everywhere equally present. So, Holmes writes that all is love, and yet all is law. You can't take one without the other. They are a marriage, a unity. And he writes that the study to study, that we should study, the nature of reality so that we avoid two, he says, grave mistakes. And the first one is viewing life as made up only of mechanical laws, because then the love is lost, or viewing it as made up only of spontaneous actions. And that's where I was back in the beginning, before I had Science of Mind. I was seeing love only as spontaneous actions that happened or didn't, more human love. God is both that love and that law. Law is the spontaneous action. And love is the spontaneous action. And God is both the mechanical laws and the spontaneous action. Infinite Spirit operates through an infinite and immutable law. So love operates through this law, which creates, which is creative. I think I'm good.
Okay.
I didn't know how much I was going to say about this. I had lots of different ideas. But I think that's good.
You are good, and you are loved, Kim.
Thank you, so are you.
I love the saying that love is the unifying force of the universe. We know that God is all that is, and the Bible, and as I just heard, Emerson also says that God is love. So, consequently, love is all that is. It's a very simple mathematical proposition. God is all that is, and God is love, so therefore, love is all that is. Pretty simple idea. Now, the love we're talking about is not the Valentine's romantic love that we feel this time of year, the warm, tingly feeling that we enjoy with loved ones, although it can elicit the same feeling. We're talking about God love, the unifying force of the universe, the glue that holds all life together. It's the principle of oneness, it's the principle of wholeness, and it's the nature of one life shared through and in all that exists. It's transcendent of all conditions and circumstances, and yet it flows through every condition and every circumstance. We can mentally disconnect from it, but it is still there. We can ignore it, deny it, refuse it, but it, as a universal truth, is eternally present. It's always there. We literally cannot step out of it. We cannot step out of love. We are asked or tasked to be love, as if we have a choice. Actually, we are a choice to act as if we have a choice, and we are susceptible to the consequences of such actions. When we act less than loving, we receive less loving consequences, conditions, experiences, manifestations, and so on. We are not punished by behaving less than loving. We suffer the consequences of acting less than our true cosmic nature. We're acting less than the divine idea of who we really are. So, you want the answer of how to get back on track? Just be love. It's just that simple. Dr. Martin Luther King says, love is not the answer, love is the assignment. So the assignment is to just be love. The assignment is to be your true, natural self. Live up to your divine potential. We are the answer. God can only do for us what God can do through us, so maybe we don't need to find an answer. Maybe we need to change the question. And that question might be something like, what am I to be or do in this situation? And the answer then and always is, be and do love. Quite simply. Rumi says, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have been built against it. If you feel any separation from God, if you feel there's a wall between you and your highest good, God didn't move. The good wasn't misplaced. God did not separate. And by God's nature as an infinite being, God couldn't even separate it if it wanted to. If it did, God would have to cease being as an infinite being. And I happen to believe that that's one of God's greatest assets, that God is infinite and eternal. Khalil Gibran says, work with love and you tie yourself to yourself, to one another, and to God. That is the answer. We're working with love to create a world we wish to experience. So being love is always the answer.
Yes, it is. And as humans, we all know that it's sometimes easy to step out of it and feel those consequences and experience them. And it's just as easy to step back into it. Or just as simple, maybe. Maybe not as easy always, but definitely as simple as that. So the question arises, how does this impulsion called love show up in our lives? And for each of us, it's unique because we are each provided multiple opportunities in our life to demonstrate the creative force called love. Multiple opportunities. And sometimes they feel really good, and sometimes they don't feel so good, right? Am I right? So a colleague of ours, and who I would term an incredible example of science of mind and love in the world, Reverend Jane Beach, wrote this: every cell in your body is eavesdropping on your internal dialogue. My body, and your body, pays attention to whatever I'm thinking and feeling. When I'm happy, my body feels relaxed and secure, so I can devote all my attention to enjoying life. When I am upset with myself or another, my body tenses, stresses, preparing for conflict. There are many reasons to look for the good in life and to treat myself with loving kindness. Well, most of us carry around a lot of stories, and from time to time it's a good thing to take a look at which stories you're telling today. Some of them may be true, and some of them may not be true. The longer we live, the more stories we carry, and sometimes the heavier the load becomes. For example, we each carry stories about the roles that we play in life. For me, that would be wife, mother, grandmother, daughter, retired teacher, minister, stories about my heritage and my childhood. And then there are stories that we tell ourselves, which we have been told about ourselves. Stories that lead to our feelings and beliefs about who we are. That song was perfect today. I am remembering the truth of who I am. Some of these stories may be about our talents or the positive aspects of self, and some of them may have been told so that we are telling stories to ourselves today about our flaws, our limitations, or our worth, or the lack thereof. Most of you know that my mom recently made her transition. And oh gosh, I would just love to stand up here and tell you that because I'm a minister, and because I know God so well, and I know the eternal and infinite peace of God that I just moved right on through the process with ease and grace, no problem. Our other minister is chuckling at that one, as probably you are too. Because I do know God, that is the truth. I do know that life is eternal, and I do have my ideas firm within my own mind about life and what we perceive as death. And I didn't simply move through the process without my human side surfacing. My mom was ready to go. And those are the words that I used every time someone said, "I'm so sorry." I would say, well, she was ready. And I was strong. I was so strong. I spent most of my time saying that to others and to myself until I get home from the celebration of her life. And then I fell apart. Yes, those words were true. She was ready. But it cracked me wide open. So many feelings at the core of my being. And yet, at the core of my being was still that still small voice of God speaking to me, through me, reassuring me that all is well and that love is fully present. However, my human self needed to evaluate once again the underlying beliefs and stories which disputed my truest, highest state of knowing and being. We all have that inner team of collaborators that love to get together and talk within us, batting the ball back and forth, throwing it all over the place, dropping it sometimes, catching it sometimes. And us just listening to all those ideas. Stories within me of loss, abandonment, unworthiness, and being unloved. I had learned lots of stories in my lifetime that surfaced and needed to be looked at again. In Science of Mind, we study and apply spiritual laws, laws that work in the way that we work them. And yes, we must be aware that although we're always in motion to live as a loving, self-giving, individualized creation of God, we are human and we have human qualities, as well as the godly qualities. Yes, we are made in the image and likeness of love and bliss. And we, in our humanness, have been given the ability to feel and to make choices. And in our humanness, there are times when we need to just be in the present moment and allow and observe. Part of our choice making means that we owe it to ourselves to be patient and kind to ourselves, to honor our path forward by leaning into those feelings within the experience while keeping the truth of our being center stage. For me, this meant giving myself the time and space to recognize what was flowing out of me, what was erupting, what I was feeling within me, so that as I moved on, I didn't do that burial job, that suppression, repression of feelings and stories. So that I would move on, and I would do so without continuing to play out the historical stories and mistaken beliefs that I have come to realize were never my truth. They were part of the collection of stories from the past that were limiting. God is not limiting. There is no limitation. God is our supply. And taking the time for our humanness to surface and reveal healing moves us along in love. It's a demonstration that we are the love that is the answer. We already are that. Brene Brown wrote, when you own your story, you get to write the ending. Isn't that beautiful? Informative. I look forward to writing my ending and taking my time along the way, that is. And I hope that you do too. That each and every day you are writing your own love story. Whether you're in your humanness or fully recognizing the godliness that you are. Love is the highest expression of life. And so it is. Let us stand and